Welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about consecutive integers and square roots. Let's go ahead and take a look at that right now. So here we are, consecutive integers, and before we start with finding consecutive integers, we have to have a definition to what a consecutive integer is. So a consecutive integer are numbers that do not contain decimals or fractions, that's what makes them an integer, and are in order on a number line. So for example, 7 and 8 don't have decimals, don't have fractions, are on a number line in order, so they are consecutive integers. -2, -3 don't have fractions, don't have decimals, they're in order on a number line, so therefore they are consecutive integers. So we have a few examples down here at the bottom. Let's start with the square root of 20. The square root of 20, we can figure this out in two ways. Which consecutive integers does it fall between? By either finding the perfect squares on either side of the square root of 20, or we can use our calculator to give us a little bit of a help. So we're going to drag in our Desmos calculator here. We've got the square root of 20, so we're going to type that right into our Desmos calculator. So we're going to type in the square root of 20, so square root of 20, and we're going to see that that's going to give us 4.47. Now, what number is two numbers is 4.47 between? And that's going to be between 4 and 5. So let's go ahead and put that in as 4 and 5, and we've done that with our little ampersand symbol there, and now let's go to the next one. So looking at the next one there, we've got the square root of 58. So again, I'm going to use my calculator. I'm going to drag in my little Desmos calculator here. And I'm going to type in my square root symbol. So we're going to start with the square root of 58. So again, square root symbol, 58. And I'm going to get between 7.6. Now 7.6, which two numbers is that between? So that's going to fall between 7 and 8. So I've got 7 and 8 here as my two numbers that one falls between. And we're on to the next one. So the next one there, we've got the square root of 106. So we're going to drag in our fancy calculator here. We're going to use our Desmos calculator to start with our square root symbol. So the square root of 106. And it tells us, it even says our answer is right here on the side, 10.29. So what numbers is between 10 is 10.2 fall between? And that's going to be 10 and 11. And then our last one there is the square root of 11. So again, we're going to start by dragging in our fancy calculator. So our fancy calculator over here to the left. We're going to type in our square roots. So again, we start with our square root symbol. Square root of 11 is 3.3. So what number is between 3.3? And that's going to be between 3 and 4. So 3 and 4 are answers there. And we've got all of them done. Now let's move on to the next one. So here we are at example A, and it says circle all the possible values for x in this inequality. So we've got 8 is less than the square root of x as less than the square root of 9. So we've got a bunch of choices there. We're going to be plugging them in for that x and figuring out which one makes the statement true. So the first thing that we have there, we can eliminate some things without using our calculator. So for example, we have the square root of 6. So we need to figure out, is the square root of 6 going to be between the numbers 8 and 9? We automatically know that when we take the square root of 6, we're going to be making it smaller. So if we're going to be making it smaller, it's definitely not going to fit between two numbers that are bigger than it, 8 and 9. So we can go ahead and eliminate that. Now for 8.8, that's tricky. 8.8 could be between 8 and 9, but it's not just between 8 and 9. It's the square root of that number 8.8 between 8 and 9. So let's drag over our fancy calculator, see if that can help us here in this particular situation. So we're going to take our fancy calculator and we're going to plug in what we know or what we have here. So let's put that one in the front so they can block out everything else that we need. So we're going to be typing in the square root of 8.8. So we want the square root symbol 8.8. And we see here that that's going to give us 2.96. Well, 2.96 is definitely not between 8 and 9. So we can go ahead and get our calculator out of here. We know that's not between 8 and 9, so that's not going to be a correct answer either. So we know that the numbers that we're looking for are going to have to be bigger numbers so that when we square root them, they end up between 8 and 9. So we know we can eliminate 9.2 based on what we figured out in our last two. The square root of 64 is a perfect square. That's 8. Is 8 between 8 and 9? No, so that's not a correct answer. 81 is a perfect square, so is that going to be between 8 and 9? Square root of 81 is 9, so 9 is not between 8 and 9, so that eliminates that. If we know 81 is 9, then we know the square root of that is going to be larger. If we square root 90, that will be larger than 9, so we can go ahead and eliminate that, which leaves us with just two possible answers. So the possible answers are 68 and 73. So we can check, is the square root of 68 on one side is going to be 64, and on the other side is going to be 81. So that's going to be between 8 and 9 because the square root of 64 is 8. The square root of 81 is 9. So we know that one checks out. Same thing with the 73. We know that we've got our 64 here. So we got 64 on one side of 73. We've got 81 on the other side. And again, we just talked about how that's square root of 8, square root of 9. So that's going to be between. So that checks out as well. So we did that with some process of elimination by figuring out answers we knew were going to be way wrong. We knew two perfect squares, so that was super helpful because we knew they weren't going to be numbers in between, which gave us 90 being too big, so it eliminated it down to two answers. We really didn't do a whole lot of math. If you didn't really want to do all of that, you could put each one of these numbers in your calculator and hit the square root button. That will work. It'll take a little bit longer, but you'll get the right answer. But there's more than one way to do these. Now let's go ahead and take a look at some negative square roots. Square roots. Here we've got three things that are similar but not exactly the same. We've got the square root of 9, we've got negative the square root of 9, and some plus minus symbol, something we've never seen before. We'll deal with that in a second. All right, we've got the square root of 9. We know what that one is. That's helpful to us. Well, that's a perfect square. We've seen that before. Square root of 9, positive 3. That's easy. Now we've got negative the square root of 9. So the first thing we're going to have to do is the thing inside the exponent, inside the square root symbol. So the square root of 9 is 3. Okay, so we know that. The negative symbol doesn't really have anything for us to do, so we'll just bring that down. So our answer is going to be negative 3. Now, the last thing that we have here is a plus minus symbol. And if we pull out our fancy calculator here, we'll see that we don't even have that symbol on the fancy calculator. We don't have that anywhere on there, so can't really use that in this case. So we're going to get rid of our fancy calculator because it's not going to help us. So in this case, we've got to write both the positive and the negative. So the positive square root of 9 is going to be 3, and the negative square root of 9 is going to be negative 3. Now notice, this is not the same thing as having the square root of symbol, then the negative, then the 9, okay? That's going to be an imaginary number. You're going to learn about those in algebra too. Don't worry about them. You don't need to know about them right now, but they are something that you're going to deal with later. That brings us to the end of this set of notes. So if you like this video, go ahead and throw us a thumbs up. If you love this video, go ahead and throw us a sub, and we will catch you in the next one.